We need to find a way to get in good trouble, necessary trouble, if we're going to save America.
This is Paige. Welcome to the Necessary Trouble Show. Here's your host, my dad, Russell Fugett.
Welcome back to the Necessary Trouble Show. I'm Russell Fugett. We're here in the Good Word Digital Studios. If you need a fast, affordable website, social media management, anything in the digital marketing, design, space, creative, you name it, find us at goodworddigital.com. Today, I'm glad to be joined by my good friend, and he wears so many hats, and he wears them all so beautifully and so wonderfully. Kyle Boyer. Kyle is a reverend at the Church of God in Christ. He is the current president of the NAACP chapter in Westchester, Pennsylvania, former Democratic State Senate candidate in the state of Pennsylvania, and he is also an educator, and he is also an author. His most recent book is The Prince, the Priest, and the Prophets, which just came out in August. Kyle, thanks for being a guest today on Necessary Trouble.
Thank you, man. It's an honor to be here. I gotta say, I pastored the Tabernacle Baptist Church, and that
All
was
right.
how I want them to, I very much Kojic, but I pastored the Tabernacle Baptist Church. So if I don't say that, I'm gonna get in trouble.
All right. My godfather, Bishop, is Abner Haynes, and his brother, Bishop Haynes, and is in the Kojic tradition. And so I certainly honor that and know a little bit about that. So I'm glad for you being here today. Let's start where I ended. Tell us about your new book.
Yeah, man. This book, the inspiration came after the acquittal of George Zimmerman, the gentleman who took the life of Trayvon Martin. And it was really after that I started to put some things on paper, and then over time, just more study and more reflection kind of materialized as this book, which, took me however long that's been, 7 years, but really in earnest, 5 years to write. And ultimately what it's about the need for prophetic leadership in America. So I take the Old Testament paradigm of king, priest, and prophet. You know how Black preachers are. We like alliteration.
Yes.
So king shows up as prince, but prince, priest, and prophet as these sort of three roles that were given in the Old Testament and how they manifest and interweave today in our society. It is very critical of Donald Trump, but it assesses the need for prophetic leadership, particularly around the issue of race in America today. It really is my heart, a lot of my philosophy. It's both social science and sermon. So I am proud of it, but I do think it'll give people a lot to think about, a lot to reflect about if they choose to read it.
Well, of course, in this season, there is so much to think about and reflect upon. And I'm sure once we get through this election season, there will continue to be. So hope everyone goes to Amazon. And I put myself first in line to go to Amazon and to purchase the book.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about what you're seeing right now in Westchester, Southeast Pennsylvania. I think I saw on your Instagram feed you've already gone and done your civic duty in cast a vote, if I'm not mistaken. What is your sense on the ground of what's happening right now? And of course, anything you want to add about concerning your role as it relates to the NAACP in Westchester and in that region?
Absolutely. So I'll work backwards first. So from a national standpoint, the NAACP, for better or for worse, because it definitely has its wrinkles, but the NAACP is designed to really be organized, follow the alignment from the top and hear what the national is doing, and then the state conferences do those things and the local units do those things. So right now, the entire NAACP is mobilized around and focused on turning out the vote. The NAACP is, of course, a nonpartisan entity, but I think those who are really focused on social justice will come to the right conclusions as it relates to their vote when they look at who's on the ballot, I hope. What I'm seeing in Southeast PA is a lot of energy, a lot of people voting. I live in Chester County, one of the collar counties of the Philadelphia area. In this region, Chester, Montgomery, Delaware counties, Bucks to a certain extent, they really help determine elections in Pennsylvania as it relates to who wins the presidential vote. And right now, I'm feeling like one candidate has a better position than the other, but definitely not resting on my laurels. My whole focus right now is as a public servant, and even to a certain extent as a pastor, my whole focus is on reminding people of what their civic duty is and to be good stewards of what John Lewis spent so much of his time preaching about and talking about, and that's the right to vote. Because as he said in one of his, more played speeches after his death, we can lose it. So I'm not resting as if it's secure, because we have an administration that has made it very clear that they're okay with threatening the right to vote and threatening the principles of democracy that I've taught about in the past as a social studies teacher. So I'm not resting.
I know that's right, and I don't think any of us are until the work is done. And there's so much work, as John Lewis said, to protect our democracy and to really save the soul of our democracy. And we're of course counting on our better angels to manifest themselves in the coming weeks and months as we go forward into the new year even. Um, Tell us a little bit about your role as an educator, again, picking up where you just left off in social studies. Just I know you're teaching virtually, and after we're done here in a few minutes, you're going to hop back into the virtual classroom. What are you seeing and experiencing now as an instructor, and what are your feelings about what we are doing to serve our young people, and how we can perhaps serve them better in this environment that we're seemingly going to be in for a little while longer?
Man, after 2020, we're going to study this year as it relates to ethics for a very long time, because
Mm.
there are so many competing interests, particularly ethics and education. Do you prevent people from getting a virus at the expense of perhaps their academic trajectory for quite some time? Or do you keep them at home? And there are a lot of competing ethics, and I see it as a teacher and as an elected school board member. I will tell you this: there is a lot of convenience to virtual learning in some areas, but in more areas than not, it's inconvenient. And our students, unfortunately, are paying the price. You want to keep everyone safe. You've got teachers who have their own kids and don't want to get them sick. You've got educators and staff who have parents that they're taking care of and don't want to take a virus back to them. But at the same time, kids don't learn as well virtually. We've seen that throughout the history of virtual education, cyber charter schools. The outcomes are not as good as they are. And, there are a few kids who do benefit from that environment, but the vast majority don't. So I think academically, the nation is suffering just a little bit. But if you're to find a silver lining, I think the silver lining is that we're going to be able to build up some capacity we didn't have before. When everyone is back in classrooms, which most students will be, eventually, most of our schools now are going to be one-to-one. So we're not going to have as much of a technology gap as we had before, because COVID-19 forced us to implement those practices and to get those resources. But you still, even in that, see the disparities between the haves and the have-nots. So there are a lot of questions that we have to answer. But as a final just statement on this, it goes back to our vote, because there are some who are more in favor of educational equity than others, and how we vote on November 3rd is going to help determine the outcome of some of those things in the future.
I'm going to ask you a question that I've been grappling with, and probably will for some time, and I imagine you and many others are. And in this moment, there's been discourse in certain circles. And I think people are well intended in this type of discourse that's saying, why can't we have a more civil discourse? Why can't we just simply discuss both sides, so to speak, Republican, Democrat, people who are for the president, people who are for the Democratic ticket? Why can't we have a simple civil discourse? And particularly for those of the Christian faith that you and I, of course, share. I struggle in this moment. I think this moment is unlike any other moment that we at least in our lifetimes, around 40 years or less. In your case, I know, have lived through, where I think we're certainly beyond that in terms of the options that we have to go and choose on election day, as election is currently playing out. Um, what do you think, within the realm of the prophetic that the church, is missing? And of course, this often breaks down along racial lines, for better or for worse. What do you sense, or what do you say in this moment? And perhaps this may refer back to your text as well.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely going to wax prophetic here, put on my full preacher hat. I am a public theologian. I didn't even have that term before I went to seminary. But basically, we take our theological concept and bring it to the public sphere in the vernacular. So speak in language that makes sense, but it is still theological at its essence. And ultimately, right, I can go back to one of my favorite scriptures that's so clear and applicable to everything and everybody. Micah 6:8. What does the Lord require of us? This rhetorical question, but to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. So for a lot of people, they are uncomfortable with that justice aspect, but part of doing justice is speaking the truth to power. And when you see such overt acts of racism, and when you see such blatant displays of injustice, we do a tremendous disservice to those who are here now, and a dishonor to those in the past when we don't call it out. And your intro, get in necessary trouble, good trouble. So I'm okay calling out, the white evangelical church, letting them know what is wrong, what they haven't addressed, the error of their ways. I'm okay calling out the predominantly black church and saying social justice has to be at the essence of what we're doing, and it can't just be prosperity preaching. And I'm definitely okay calling out Donald Trump and saying you are an unjust leader. You are an example of one who is a reprobate, who has displayed that he has no concern for justice. And everybody's not comfortable with that, but to me, that's the necessary trouble that some of us are called to get in.
Well, I'm just blessed to have your voice in this space, and on necessary trouble, and to create a space where that very important and insightful perspective can be shared. Kyle, thank you so much for being a friend. Thank you for your voice, and thank you so much for being a
Absolutely,
guest
bro.
today on the Necessary Trouble Show. And keep up the good work, and we'll circle back to you to see how things shake out in Southeast Pennsylvania.
Thanks for watching the Necessary Trouble Show. Please visit necessarytroubleshow.com to support the show and to learn more. Subscribe to our e-newsletter and podcast, and follow us on social media at Necessary Trouble Show.
Good job, Daddy. This is Paige. Thanks for watching.